So team, in the last part of our meeting, we'll talk about year end and things to think about as we end this year and move into next year. And as I mentioned to you all, recently Jamie in a one-on-one had asked, what should I be thinking about at year end? And I said, oh, that might be a good topic for our team meeting. Are you okay with that? And I asked you all, you said you'd be interested. So if you ever have a topic you think would be helpful to discuss, like if you think it's interesting, a lot of other people probably have that same question. And I don't know too many times that I talked about that in my career. So hopefully it's helpful. But we'll talk about things to think of as we close out this year, as you think about next year, and then just some things for time off. And I know some people will talk about New Year's resolutions and other people like it's kind of arbitrary. But as we close out the year, I do think it can be a really helpful time to think about what you've done this year. And so, as you know, we do performance reviews in February. And so I think it's important that you get a sense of what to do to prepare for those, but also just for your own career and think about what you like doing day in and day out. So as you close out the year, I encourage everybody, and you may have heard me, I often talk about through the year having a running list of things that you're working on so that come performance review time, you're not scrambling to think about, okay, what did I possibly do? Because it's hard for us to remember. It's hard for me to remember what I did yesterday. But to keep that running list, but so ongoing, some things that can be helpful are to have like a document running with the things you're working on, some of the impact that can be helpful, and also having a folder of notes. Like I have an email folder called Positive Notes. Other people have different names for it, but when people send you feedback, having that and having a folder, it can be helpful to one, remember what the impact is, but also if you ever have those days and you just need to hear a kind word, like I and our team are here for you. But to have that can be kind of nice to glance at. And so again, I'm not very creative. It's called Positive Notes. But thinking about if you haven't done that and have that running list of what you're doing and the impact, is it? No, I'm not trying to create your resume for your next job. I want you all to stay. But okay, fair point. But is to think about, if you haven't done that, just taking some time to list out. And I think it can be helpful, but I don't want you to do an exercise just to prepare for performance reviews. I think it's really important for you to know what you like. And as you think, do you want to focus more on something? Some of you all, we've talked about, you may want to move into management. So think about what you can do. Some of you may not. And whatever your path is, to really think about what you've enjoyed working on, what maybe you worked on that you didn't love at the time, but you were glad to have done, and you feel like, okay, maybe I might be interested in that moving forward. But to spell out some of those things, like what you've worked on, how you felt about it, what you work on day in and day out, and even like what you're doing now that's different than what you were at the beginning of the year. So I do think it can be helpful as an exercise to think about all of that. And so some of that is just to take an inventory for your career. Again, one is to prep yourselves for performance reviews, and we'll talk more about literally preparing for your performance review and what to do so it doesn't feel like it's the Wizard of Oz. But for your career, to think about those things. And if there's things that you're working on that you're like, I've done this enough and I don't feel like I'm learning from this, or I feel like it's repetitive. So think about those things, because we can talk about those in our one-on-one. Like some of the things I'll have to say, okay, we have to get this done, but let's think about a way we can change that or shift things around so that it's interesting and you feel like you are growing in the way that you're interested in. So as you think about next year or this year, I do think some of that is spelling out those things. And I'll send a list of the ways that you can do that. And again, I encourage you to start as you think about in 2024. If you haven't done that, and right now you're kind of creating that list, like that's okay, you're human. But starting next year, think about as you work on whether it's projects or new tasks, having those, and then what the impact is. How does that help the company's goals? How does that make someone else's life easier? So having that, but also what you enjoy working on. So thinking about what your accomplishments and also things for this year, like things that went wrong and what you learned from it. Because we talk a lot about mistakes and how they're going to happen, but to make those actual learning experiences. And so we can talk about those in one-on-ones, both as we wind down the year, some of you, and then some of you won't have one again till next year. And so, but just going through those and just thinking about candidly what your thoughts are and what those learning experiences have been. And some things, if there's learning experience that you think, okay, I went through this, but it would be helpful for the team to know. So again, just like if you have a topic, we talk about it in the one-on-one, and I may say, ooh, that'd be good for us to talk about in team meetings. to think about what a learning experience was, something that went wrong or something that could have gone better, and what you learned from it. And I'll talk about them as well. I mean, there's certainly things I've done that I'm like, oh, on reflection, I should have done this. And so to incorporate those in our team meetings going forward. So as we wind down the year, kind of taking that inventory. What went well, what didn't, what did I learn from it, what do I enjoy? And so then thinking about 2024, and some of this will be prep for performance reviews, but really it's more important, I think, to have it for your career. Like, where do you want to be a year from now? And so that's something that I think can be helpful. So thinking about for this year, where are you now as opposed to where were you at the beginning of the year? And so where are you now that you'd like to be a year from now? And what does that look like? Is that aspects where you feel like there's things in your life outside of work that you haven't been able to focus on as much? So how can we think about providing some more of that balance? Is that projects you're working on at work or responsibilities or things you might be interested or want to shadow in? So that's the things I'd encourage. So I'll send that list around of things I'd like to shadow. Like you may not have done, may not have any knowledge of, but you'd like to see. Like sometimes it may be sitting in some of my meetings with other leaders or having those conversations. Or if you've been working on something but you'd like more feedback. Like the word role play can be really loaded, but to practice those things. Like if you have like a presentation and you haven't done it. So let's talk about that. Let's get opportunities for team meetings where you can talk about something so you feel comfortable. So for this year, thinking about where you are now compared to where you were at the beginning of the year, and for better, for worse, what that look like, and then where you want to be a year from now. At work, what you want to be working on, what you'd like to experience, but then also your everything outside of work and how I can help in that as well. Because my job as a manager isn't just to make sure that things get done, but it's to make sure that you're able to, I'm trying to say this without being corny, but like be the person you want to be outside of work. And having that support and what can we do? Like if there are things that happened this year that you're like, this was a scramble and I needed to be out, but I couldn't because I'm the only person that knew this. Okay, how can we cross train in some of those ways so we can kind of have each other's back? So the last is as we think about time off. So again, we are shutting down as much as possible through the beginning of the year. And so what that means from an expectation standpoint, because I know sometimes people say that and you're like, what does that mean? Is really as having out of offices that communicate that, proactively thinking about who might reach out during this time that we don't want them to be surprised. So proactive communications, as a company and the company customer service team, reaching out to customers and letting them know that we do this, but thinking about anyone you're working with to proactively let them know so we can get as much done before the holidays so you don't have to think about that. I'll be checking in a little bit. So I'm taking over a couple of responsibilities. I've talked to you all so that you can recharge. And so I'm making sure that I have a sense of what to do. But I also think it's important for succession planning, meaning as you move up in your career, as I'm in my role, I don't want you to ever think, well, I don't want that role because that means you have to work the whole holidays. I'm not doing that. Like I'm going to be taking time off. I'm spending time with family. I'm not going to be sitting there glued to my phone or my laptop, but I am going to log in for, maybe 10 or 15 minutes just to get some things done. And there's other ways we can do that. And some days I won't be logging in at all, but I just want to let you know that I'll be having coverage. And again, if there's things that you think we may need, again, let's as much as possible try to get things done before the holidays, but then communicate that we can come back to those. But if there's anything urgent, let me know because I want to help make your life easier, but also moving into leadership should not mean that you sacrifice all of your life. So I don't want anyone to ever think I wouldn't want my job one day because you feel like you're never going to have a life with your family. So I want to be transparent about that. I want all of you to be able to really recharge as much as possible. It's very important to all of us. And very little of what we do is an absolute emergency. And so again, but that proactive communication can be the best way to do it so that it's not a situation where someone reaches out and gets it out of office and is shocked that they're not going to hear back for 8 days. So let's think about that. I will. And so one thing, some of you have one-on-ones. Again, some of you, we've had our last ones, but reaching out. And so for each of you all, just send a note and say, who are people you may hear from over the holidays? What can we do to proactively communicate that if we need to? And some people may be reaching out and it's perfectly fine for them to get out of office and we will reach out when we're back. But again, as you know, we'll be easing in as we come back. We will get the work done, but we will also do it in a way that allows us to actually take that time off and not feel like a flurry when we're coming back. So hopefully that's helpful. If you have any questions, let me know. And I may, again, if someone asks a good question, I will follow up with the rest of the team because it's important to share that knowledge. But happy holidays and have a good time off.